Jim, you were a freshman, and I used to bike from Kennelon to Butler to watch your games when you played on your freshman team. And it would always occurred to me how good that team was. Even at that point when you were freshmen, of course you went undefeated. But also the dirt, the sweat, the physical violence, or the physical aspect of the game, which not having a tackle football, being involved in a tackle football game, was interesting to me. And it always occurred to me, being in 8th grade and watching, gee, could I ever be able to play that kind of a game when it was sort of 3 yards in a cloud of dust sort of mentality at that time. So even back then, that team exhibited an unbelievably good performance as freshmen. And as I remember being undefeated as freshmen, as you finished your games and you go back to the locker room or back to the field house, or not the field house, but at that time under the everybody asked, how did the freshman team do? How did the freshman team do? We won, we won, we won. To the point where it was incredible that there you established the performance that was going to continue through the 4 years. So I was in awe by that, to tell you the truth. So anyway, that was how I envisioned the start of that team.
Yeah, we didn't have the privilege of having a little league program. We did the same thing as we had to touch football out here. It's funny because I tell this, Gene Hastings was my phys ed teacher, and we're starting this team, you know, the touch team, and I think I said something to him, well, what should I play? And he goes, you should be the quarterback. You know, and that was like 6th grade maybe, and I was a quarterback, and from then on, you know, that's been like the whole, that's how it evolved.
I can remember coming down, because we didn't have midget football at that time. No, there was no organized football to speak of. But I can remember coming down to the field. We'd always bike down here from Kinnelon to come to Butler to watch the Saturday football games. But what was so unique about the Saturday football games was not only the game, but it was the halftime game that always took place. And we would talk about tackling. It was a vicious game, but depending on who showed up, halftime was there were bloody noses and scrapes and bangs, and so probably we had our own little midget football program set up every Saturday. There was a football game here, so that was the start of it.
But like you said, most of us, in another unique situation was that we had kids playing for us from Upper Green Lake, Jackson Shumlin, God rest his soul. He'd hitchhike home every night. And, you know, and that was a unique thing about playing here because, you know, most of Dover and, you know, PV and those guys, they were in a town where they could walk to the place. Half of our guys walked home.
Well, the unique
late buses.
Yeah, the unique thing was that there were no late buses. So the unique thing was that if you didn't live in town or Bloomingdale or even parts of Kinnelon, because you could walk home to Kinnelon, was that team members would leave practice. They would go down to the Time House, which was a building, a reasonably small building, but there were benches inside the Time House. Guys would sit on the benches and wait for the shift to come out of work, and then they would get their ride home from the guys working there. And the company themselves extended the shifts to match up with the high school. Where else do you hear that happening today, that they actually did that so that the kids could get home?
You guys can talk. But I have to say that every player on that team, your team, was unique and contributed to the win. I mean,
everybody had their unique talent. And
we were physically tough.
And our coaches took advantage of it. Yeah. I mean, they were aware of our skill level and put people where they needed to be. And every game was different. So you didn't know where you were going to be in the next game.